So welcome everyone. I apologise, this has taken me quite some time to film. I've just been really busy with diving and shooting stuff. Hopefully now after this video we'll be releasing a lot of content on a weekly if not daily basis. Remember, I do this part-time. I'd love to do it full-time, but it doesn't pay the bills, and I'm not sure I would do it full-time at the moment, but it's great fun. I like doing it. I like sharing my diving experiences with you, my viewers. So here it is, the second review of Blue Voyager in the Maldives. Completely different trip this time. This time I started in Kooddoo, where I got off the boat previously, and then we made the trip to Mali, which for me is kind of a bucket list trip. I'd always wanted to go from the south to Mali on a boat, and I finally managed to do it. So let's get into the review. As I said in my previous review, my reviews are trip based. And what do I mean by that? Every trip can be different. It depends on who the dive guides on the boat are. It depends who's on the boat. And as you'll see in this review, my life was made miserable by a couple of people. So I hope you enjoy the review. I am by nature critical. I do apologise for that, but it is a truthful review. Let's start off with the crew, just like last time. 10 out of 10. I mean, the crew, fantastic bunch of people. They really work hard at making sure you have the most enjoyable experience possible. You know, I take my hat off to them. From the Dhoni crew to the Blue Voyager crew, they're all integrated into making sure that if they can do it for you, they will do it. So 10 out of 10. Let's come to the cruise director. Last time 10 out of 10. Same cruise director, this time joined by his wife, but we had 22 people on the boat this time instead of 12, and I think it showed. And there were some particularly demanding people who, as I said, made my life miserable. I'll just go into that right now. Let's get it out of the way. We're all split into 4 groups. Well, we didn't dive in 4 groups most of the time, and I'll bring that up under dive guiding. You know, most of the time we were put in as 4 groups, 22 people all at the same time. Absolutely ludicrous. But I was diving with group 1, bunch of experienced divers. I was budded with a guy called Matthias, a lovely guy from Germany, very good diver. You couldn't wish for a better buddy. However, there were a couple of people in that group, one in particular with his 3-meter selfie stick, who just wanted to control the whole situation. And I did complain. I didn't want to spend all my dive time just slipping into deco at the mouth of a channel waiting for a shark to turn up. If they're going to turn up, they'll turn up in 10 or 15 minutes, right, max. You don't have to just sit there. So then I was, okay, you can go with group 3. So I went to group 3. Lovely people on the group, except for one lady in particular who just would barge you out of the way if she wanted to see something. Very rude individual, and she was a reef wrecker. She didn't care what she did, and she wasn't bored up about it, right? So anyway, I go back to group 1. I thought I'd grin and bear it, and I'll maybe have a chat with Matthias and see if we can, if we are on a channel approaching NDL, can we just leave as a buddy pair earlier. I mean, they're usually drifts, so we're all going to end up in the same spot. So I joined group 1. Then a complaint is lodged against me by Mr. Selfie Stick, the guy with the 3-meter, you'll see the footage, who shoves it up everywhere in front of you, scares away sharks while you're trying to film them because he comes in close with his camera rig when he's not using a selfie stick. That I was diving irresponsibly and getting too close to the marine life. What a load of baloney. The cruise director also told me that the dive guide had complained, a chap called TT, who I know very well. You know, it's my 3rd time diving with him. And when I spoke to him, he said, I didn't complain about you, Brian. Honestly, I didn't. So that was fabricated. So in my defence, I said, Roy, let me show you the footage of what's been going on. Nope, refused outright to even look at it. What should have happened, he should have got me and said individual face to face to sort the problem out, if in fact there was a problem. But there wasn't a problem. It was just one selfish person with his buddy who was a dangerous diver being allowed to dictate the scenario. I can only guess that, because I understand German pretty well, and he was boasting about how he was a dive instructor, worked in the Maldives, blah 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 blah. I can only guess that he's influential for bookings, so the cruise director had to kiss butt, so to speak. So I'm back with group 3, with the lady who pushes you out of the way. Guess what? I haven't got a buddy. They didn't transfer a buddy with me. I spent the rest of the trip solo diving, which is not allowed and dangerous. On that basis, 5 out of 10, and I think I'm being generous. Dive guiding, I'm going to give this 7 out of 10. To the actual dive guides, it would be 10 out of 10. But dive guiding isn't just about the dive guides. The dive guides on this boat, particularly the Maldivian dive guides, are brilliant, absolutely fantastic. But it wasn't great this time. As I said, chucking 22 people in the water just doesn't do it for me. You know, you have 4 groups for a reason, so you can separate between each group, and each group gets a reasonable dive. Group 1, the favoured child, they were in the water more often than not first. Very rarely did they not be in the first batch. Plus, on one occasion we were told, I think, reef on left shoulder, and then they went off on the right shoulder, only to do a U-turn. 22 divers going in different directions because the other half don't know. I mean, terrible, really. I also wasn't happy with the fish tank fiasco, where we're all supposed to get around in a circle. The guide, who was not a Maldivian, produces his magic little bottle of blood and guts and puts on it was a symbolic disaster. You can just see some of the footage now. Let's talk about the group situation. I think on the first day or 2 days we dived in 4 groups, but since then we've dived in 4 groups, but both groups entering the water at the same time. That doesn't really do it for me. If you're going to have 4 groups of people, put 4 groups in. We would be 5 or 6 divers in a team, and that would work really well. But no, we're having these big groups because there's only 2, and the special group, group 1, who seemed to get preferential. They got me kicked off their group because they didn't like my filming style, but I had to modify my filming style because of the freaking 3-meter GoPro stick. You can see it here, just being shoved up in front of me all the time. And I didn't complain about that, so I modified my diving style so I would be in front of the selfie stick, and what was it name? Of course, then a complaint was made against me. It was upheld. I did offer to show my footage to the course director, which proved one man in particular in group 1 was scaring away the stuff with his selfie stick. Later, with a shark in one of the shark dives. It's all there on camera. They weren't interested to see that. A little team who wanted their own. And it's annoying because, like today, they were first in on this site yesterday, or the site we just dived, and then they're first in again today. Work that one out. And then we end up getting mixed into that group because they're just taking their time filming, and then we catch up with them. So then what have we got? We've got 3 groups at least all mixed up, because at least with groups 1 and 2 with the local dives guys, they separate the groups quickly underwater and go. But 3 and 4, it's not fun. It's not fun. So yeah, a bit disappointing really, but what can I do about it? It's not my boat, is it? Luckily, TT, who'd been feeling bad about me being kicked off group 1, which he was the dive guide for, just gave me a sort of come over here, and he and I and the other Maldivian dive guide spent most of the dive diving around the jetty, and it was fantastic. So 7 out of 10. Maldivian dive guides 10 out of 10, but sorry, you get a score of 7 out of 10. The other reason I gave a low score of 7 out of 10 was nothing was done about people who were damaging the reef, dragging torches and reef hooks and stuff. And this lady, they weren't spoken to. They should have been. And finally, The pickups were a bit long sometimes. On one occasion we waited over 20, maybe 30 minutes for a pickup, just sitting there. That's not really good enough. I mean, you should plan the diving. The pickup is all in a similar location, but when you've got a renegade dive group who can just go and do what they want, surface where they want, dive like they want. And on another occasion, again because of the infamous Group 1, a couple actually ended up a couple of kilometres away because they wanted to cross the channel in a strong current. They got their way, and 2 divers, they weren't too bothered about it. They were very competent divers from France, very, very competent, but they ended up nearly back at the dive boat. So I've been generous with 7 out of 10. Quality of dive sites, better than the last trip, but I'm still going with 1 point extra, only 7 out of 10. Reason for that is as soon as we've just made 1 dive on day 1 and then we were crossing to another atoll. Reason cited, weather conditions. Well, there'd been bad weather conditions. The weather conditions for our trip were actually forecast to be pretty good. I don't know what went on. But the other reason that annoyed me, we only did 1 dive that day. We could have done 2 had it been planned better. We were sitting around, lounging around, having breakfast, and then we decided to make this 100-kilometre crossing. Why didn't we just finish the dive, start the dive early, finish the dive, right, get on the boat starts steaming to the next atoll, right, we have breakfast on the way, even if it's a light breakfast, and then do another dive later in the day. And finally, Kooddoo, without doubt, one of the best dive sites in South Mali, maybe one of the best dive sites in the Maldives. We did it twice. First dive was excellent, second dive it was rubbish, really, really rubbish, nothing to see. They hadn't bothered to understand the conditions. So we jumped in, no sharks, no rays, no nothing. There was a nice moray eel, and I think that's the shortest dive video I made on this trip. So yeah, 7 out of 10, better than last time. I gave it 6, this time I give it 7. Food, I'm going to be generous and give it 7 out of 10. There's nothing wrong with the quality of food. As I said in the last review, a bit too many carbs for my liking, but the crew will make you what you want within reason. It is a good boat for vegetarians, vegans and gluten-free people. They do try their best. When I spoke to them, they said the biggest trouble they have is getting vegan milk, but we had almond milk on my trip. So yeah, and we had a couple of gluten-free people, no problems at all. One lady had bought some stuff with her, but she didn't really need to. They understand that. So that's really, really good. I'm only giving it 7 out of 10 because of the way food is distributed. You've got a little corner, tight corner, which 22 people are expected to patiently help themselves. It just doesn't work because some people are more greedy than others. So they will actually strategically get early in line and hog the food. And if the cruise director doesn't say anything about it, he did once on some prawns, but if he doesn't intervene, mob rule dictates, right? And it's just too cramped. It doesn't work. I've been on other dive boats where they separate you into 4 groups and the food is served in bowls for you to help yourself by groups on the table, and that works really well. And I would urge Blue 02, Blue Voyager to look at that model. Remember, it's all about the customer, people, not about you, the operator. So yeah, please listen to us and please make food distribution equitable. Yeah, one day, nothing I wanted to eat because I don't like simple carbs was available. I went hungry and I was pissed off, but needs to change. So I've still been generous, 7 out of 10. That's because they look after vegetarians, vegans, gluten-free, and it's good diver fare. Cabins, different this time. 6 out of 10 for cabins. Last time I was in cabin 5, very happy with it. This time I was in cabin 7. Old mattress, uncomfortable. My bedside light wasn't working, and I'd mentioned this from day 2. And it's important that your bedside light works because you're 2 people in a cabin. Generally you're not related, it's not your wife. I mean, if you go as a single guy like me, I was sharing the cabin with an absolute fantastic guy. Ian from Australia. You couldn't wish for a better cabin buddy. But, you know, people have, you know, go to sleep different times. Some people want to read, some people want to do this. And the little directed bedside light, I think, is quite important to keep an, you know, harmony in the cabin, so to speak. So I did mention this day 2. I mentioned it again on day 3. I mentioned it again on day 4. Finally, on the last night, it was fixed. And I spoke to the chap who fixed it. I said, yeah, why is it taking so long? Well, the course director told me it was cabin 5, and one in cabin 5's working. I mean, really, not on, you know, it's not, that doesn't justify to give a score of 6 out of 10. But the mattress, we've still got the bed cover issue. Even Ian was annoyed with it. You know, they need to come up with a better bed cover system that you can easily cover yourself with the covers instead of this DIY with oversized sheets and a cover. And the lovely American couple opposite me, Claude and Anne, they suffered for 2 or 3 nights with the AC not working. Again, I just think that maybe the course director thought, yeah, they're just complaining for no reason. Nothing was done. And I think on the 3rd day, Claude and Anne, when you see this video, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. They took the air handling unit, or the fan coil unit, out of cabin 1, because I went down, I said, what's going on? Oh, we're changing it to cabin 8. I think that was the cabin for Claude. And then I spoke to them, they said, yeah, it's working great now. Why did it take 3 days to do that, you know? The AC is important for some people. I just don't understand why. So it just goes to show you can have a good cabin and you can have a crappy cabin. Safety. Yeah, Blue Voyager, they're on a tight ship. It is in general very, very safe. But there was a couple of things I was disappointed with. And it comes back to the infamous Group 1 and these 2 divers who kind of controlled the cruise director. They would push the NDL limits, maybe even going into deco. I think they did on a couple of occasions. I didn't see their computers, but just by looking at my computer and seeing where I was higher up, they must have been pushing it to the limit, definitely not within the sort of 5-minute rule. And then this pair also would put their DSMB up at about 5 meters. When the safety stops them, they'd just shoot up to the surface like Superman and Batman. They weren't spoken to about that. They should have been. The other thing was that I should have mentioned it in the first video. It was an oversight. The boarding ladder onto the Dhoni is too short. Simple as that. Having just completed another week on the liveaboard with a longer ladder, it brought it back to my mind. And I would prefer to see rope grips on the ladder. You know, you can see something in the UAE that's on the boat here. I mean, it's inexpensive, it's not difficult to do, but it does give you much more grip when you're climbing up a ladder, particularly in a rolling sea. So on that, I've just given them 8 out of 10. But I just want to reassure people who go on the boat, they do run a very safe operation. Possibly my favourite subject for a liveaboard boat, the system, or the oxygen kits. And I'm glad to say 10 out of 10 this time, and I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. I did send them some new masks. You remember last time I wasn't very happy with the quality of masks, so yeah, I'm very happy to give them 10 out of 10 this time. Condition of the boat, 8 out of 10. It's an old boat. All boats could do with more maintenance. I just feel they just do enough to keep the customer from complaining, which is okay, but they could pop it up a notch more. You know, for example, you know, the light and the AC, it's old, right? Things do need replacing. Get it done quick. Hopefully when they pull out for the season, they will give it a bit of TLC, but it's still a nice boat to be on, don't get me wrong. Air fills, I'm back where I was last time, 7 out of 10. 185 bar is not a full tank, sorry. We didn't have any 185 bar fills, but it's said by the cruise director they consider that acceptable. And it's not acceptable. Where in the world can you go to a dive shop and pay for an 185 bar fill? Yeah, for I am a BSAC advanced instructor. BSAC divers in particular want a full fill. And a UK diver, comment below please if you think 185 in a 207 bar cylinder would be acceptable in the UK. Furthermore, I use the 15 litre steel. That's going to be rated at 228 or 232 bar. They fill it to 200 bar. You know, come on. Why do old fat guys like me want a 50? Because we breathe more, right? And we want not to disadvantage anyone on the dive. So fill it to its working capacity. Same with the Allies, the Alliators. Why do you fill them to 200 when you can fill them to 207? I know I may sound pedantic, but a full fill is a full fill. Booking admin, very efficient, quick responses in the main. Sometimes they take a bit of time. Still 8 out of 10 until there's online forms that you can fill online, and then you just pitch up on the boat and sign printouts, or preferably you do e-signatures before you get there. You know, no Liveaboard's going to get 10 out of 10 from me. It's simple to do, it costs a bit of money, and it makes life a lot easier. You're tired, sometimes maybe people from America have travelled nearly over a day to get to you, and then you got to sit there like school children and fill in forms. No, get it all done before we get on the boat, please. Dhoni Diving, 8 out of 10. 10 out of 10 for the crew, but with 22 divers, that Dhoni is just far too cramped. That's my personal opinion. I've just been on another Liveaboard which had 15 divers on a smaller Dhoni, and it wasn't cramped. But I think it's just the way it's laid out. Also, the boarding ladder, as I'll mention again later, is too short and it needs rope grips. So 8 out of 10 for Dhoni Diving. There you have it, the review on Blue 02 Kooddoo to Mali with 22 divers. The score was 91, which equates to 76%, so they've dropped to 3 stars. Remember, my star system is based on 50 to 60, 1 star, 60 to 70, 2 stars, 70 to 83 stars, 80 to 94 stars, and 90 to 100, 5 stars. When this boat's busy or has got influential people on board, the quality drops. But it's still a good boat, still a good crew. Would I go on Blue Voyager again? I'm not really sure. I would if it was 12 divers or even 16, but I think when they push the numbers up, and I think they can take 26, it's just too much. It is a big boat, but it just doesn't work. So yeah, but you'll see now I've got Claude giving a review. He's much more sort of a gentleman than I am, I guess, and he's a different style of diver. He and his wife in retirement travel around the world diving, and he kindly agreed to give his viewpoint of the trip, and I wanted to do that just to make the review a bit more balanced, because I wasn't happy with certain things. He was in group 3, good diver, good photographer, his wife also. I mean, Claude's 70 years old, amazing, and he's still diving probably more than I am in many ways. So this is what Claude's got to say, and thanks for watching this review. Claude has quite kindly offered to give me his thoughts on the trip, various aspects. It's just an ad hoc as we go interview, so no real questions. I may put a couple in, but I'm just going to get Claude's thoughts on the boat, the diving, whatever you want to talk about, Claude.
Very good, thank you. Well, the boat, the Blue Explorer, is a very fine boat. It's recently refurbished in the last few years, and the crew is very professional. Maggie and Roy run a very good shop, and they're very well coordinated. They seem very seamless in how they handle things and know how to treat the guests. We've enjoyed a 10-day trip. We're on our last day now. The diving has been very interesting. A lot of channel diving. We're able to see large fish, rays, eagle rays, sharks of all types, and obviously we went to a couple of locations where we were able to see mantas, which are always beautiful, and we've had a very, very nice time. The food is delicious, and it's been very entertaining. Highlights of the trip, I would say, are diversity of the kinds of dives that we did. We did some that were wall dives, we did some that were heavy current and channel dives, and those were particularly challenging, but also good for seeing the big stuff, the big fish.
Things that annoyed you on the trip, or could have been improved, or you weren't happy with?
I think one minor thing is there's 3 decks on the ship, and there are no restrooms other than in your stateroom. So that it tends to, when you need to use the toilet, you have to go back down below to your stateroom. So that's mildly painful, but other than that, I would say the crew's been attentive and the food has been good, and I've enjoyed it.
All right, and on the diving?
The diving,
any annoyances?
No real annoyances, as much as a little bit of surprise. The visibility was not quite what I would have hoped or expected. Perhaps our trip last year to Indonesia, with a lot less sand and a lot better visibility, spoiled me a little bit. But the Maldives here is a much more sandy environment, and therefore it's stirred up with the currents and doesn't enable the kind of lengthy visibility, like 150 feet, that we had when we were in Indonesia last year. Still reasonably good visibility and good shooting if you're a photographer.
And size as a dive group, happy with that?
Well, you know, that's the size of the dive group, 22 to 25 divers, is a little bit clumsy sometimes, and they need to make sure that we put distance between the groups. Toward the last 3 or 4 days, we have been doing that. They've been holding back the second pair of groups to go, usually 4 in each group, 4 groups, 5 in a group. So it's been better toward the latter part of the excursion, but they need to spread out the divers a little bit more, because you don't want to crowd over a particular viewing site or interesting piece of marine life.
All right, Claude, thanks for that.
Sure, no problem.
This will be my review video, because you know I can be highly critical, and I just wanted a balanced opinion.
Okay,
Thanks,
well,
Claude,
thank you,
providing
Brian.
that.
It's been a pleasure diving with you.